G'day guys and welcome to local band Smokeout Australia. Today I'm really excited to have this guest on board here. We got Alex from Exotic Potion Cookies, my man, my brother. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon. And of course we have our usual co-host. We have Mr. Luke Thompson here from Void Matter. How are you today, man?
Mate, I've been better, but let's fucking go.
So, man, Alex, I've known you for a couple of years now, dude, and there's a lot to talk about because there's a lot that's kind of happened, not only publicly but behind the scenes for the past couple of years for you, dude. There's been a lot of changes. So, the first one, if people don't know, I don't even know what the original name was, but I think it was like Odysseus Reborn, and then it was
Odyssey,
Odysseus, Odyssey,
actually.
sorry,
Yeah,
Odyssey.
Odyssey back in the day. Like right back.
Right,
It's going
right.
back.
So it was, so that was Odyssey, and then I'm guessing it went to Odysseus Reborn.
Yeah. Yeah, Odysseus Reborn, and then dropped the Reborn Odysseus,
And then
and
Odysseus,
finally.
and that was a long time serving band. If people don't know that, hey,
Reborn was, yeah. We were still growing and learning. I mean, as we all still are, but like specifically back then, it was, we had very little idea of what being in a band actually was, you know, and and doing that sort of thing, and it was super. It's building blocks,
mm,
It was foundations.
mm. And that was a long serving, and you did a lot of touring and all that kind of stuff. And then I
We
know,
did, man. We
yeah,
went around a bit.
you went fucking everywhere, like even places that I don't think many other bands, period, can even say that they've actually been able to play. So,
We
there's
played
a
some interesting places.
yeah, yeah. What's
Sure.
some of the most interesting places that people wouldn't know that you've actually
Oh,
played?
shit, man. Like up in like with Reborn, we got up to the Daintree. We played in the Daintree, and
Damn.
yeah, in this little backpacker place, I guess, sort of holiday spot. It was cool, but I don't know anyone who's done tourist spot gigs knows that generally tourists aren't very interested in original music that's happening in areas. But the fact is, we got to play in the Daintree, so that was still pretty sweet.
Nice.
Um, oh shit, man, there's been so many places, but like somewhere that we got to play in Odysseus, which is now essentially Exotic Potion Cookies. Like we went under Odysseus for a while and then became Exotic Potion Cookies. Was down underground in this mine in Andamuka, down in South Australia, and it's like you go underground, you go down into this big hole in the ground, and like go up into this cavern, and had a full stage set up in there running off a generator, and yeah, crazy shit.
That was the shit when we first met, and some of the shit that you were telling me about that. I'm like, holy fuck, man. I don't think anyone's ever
Man,
had the ability to say that they've done that, man. Like I've been to Cooper Pedy,
uh,
and we stayed in it. I've seen what it's like to be in like underground pubs and underground shit, but to actually play a
yeah.
show in one of those, like what was the atmosphere like when you played that show?
I mean, electric, because like Andamuka, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's like, this tiny little opal mining town. It's self-sufficient. It doesn't have a council. It's like the people all have to look after themselves and the roads and each other.
Mm.
Um, it's like everyone comes together. There's a real community sort of thing, that happens there. And honestly, like, being underground, I've been asked a few times, what was the sound like down there? But all the walls were, sort of clay, and that sort of thing. So it actually absorbed a fair bit.
Mm.
So it didn't bounce around as you might expect for sort of an underground cavern. It was actually a bit more absorbing. So it actually sounded pretty decent down there.
Damn.
Cool.
And what was the inspiration for some of it? Because I know some bands they like to just hit the big major cities, even like going up the north coast. They'll stop at your standard like Cairns and Townsville and shit. But like,
I mean,
what was the
like
inspiration to go out there, man?
I'm sure anyone who's played in a band who's done these sort of, out of the way gigs, they can be super hit and miss, but sometimes you have such an amazing time, going to some of these places and I guess, there's these different communities there and a lot of them are starved for it as well because they don't get things like that come through very often.
Mm.
So, it's actually good to get out and try and get to these places because, a lot of people don't have the ability to travel, so it's like bring the show to them. You know, like obviously we've done a fair bit of stuff with Death by Carrot, and they tend to hit a lot of the smaller regional places as well. And it's from working with them, you know, that we sort of start to realize, you know, wow, this, you know, you can actually have some really good nights in these places.
Mm.
There's some amazing communities, and you know, on top of that all, it's creating stops along the way. You know, it's like rather
Mm.
than just going, you know, and trying to travel 5 hours or 6 hours or 7 hours in between places, if there is somewhere in the middle that's feasible, that is happy to have you, and it's like, why wouldn't you slot that in?
Mm. 100%, dude. 100%. That's half.
Chance
This
for
is
more
half.
fans.
Yeah, and it's half the reason why I asked you on here, man. Because there's a couple of questions we'll get to, but the biggest one I know Luke did have a pretty big question he wanted to ask.
Sure.
Yeah, so recently, I think it was early 2021, you made the official change from Odysseus to exotic potion cookies.
Yeah.
So what was the mindset behind that, and what is the main difference between the bands? Because are you changing members? Are you changing material? Is the old material dead? Like what
Well,
how did
like
you go about it?
there was a member change that kind of spurred it originally. Okay, like far out. Like okay, let's backtrack real quick. So going to
Beginning, bro.
Reborn,
Let's
going back to Reborn, right? Like you know we've been doing that for ages, and Rob had been playing guitar and singing, and I'd been on drums, and we had this jam one day. Where I jumped on keys and Rob jumped on drums and Seth the guitarist he was on his guitar and we just had this jam and you know we recorded it but didn't really think much of it. We're like, oh yeah, whatever, that was fun, and then listened back to it like you know a week later and we're like, oh damn, there's actually some pretty cool stuff in this hour and a half jam, you know, and there's actually some really cool ideas and different things that could be developed into songs. And so we sort of started going, shit, you know, maybe we should start trying to do this, you know, and try this new format because it's you know, like obviously every band's writing style is different, but in Reborn, it was a lot of Rob doing all the writing, and he'd pretty much write the song, like pretty much every instrument, and then give it to us, and you know we'd do our own things with it, but essentially the song was already written, and we were sort of all getting to the point where we're sort of like, you know, we all want to have a bit of more of an input in the writing process, and you know, having these jams and doing it like that was a lot more organic and natural the way it was all coming together and we were creating some pretty cool stuff. So we're like, okay, well let's try doing this. So that meant Rob moving to drums and myself moving to keys and vocals. So that was when we dropped the Reborn and sort of just went under Odysseus for a while because we didn't want to make a big change out of it. You know, we wanted to, you know, sort of try and make the transition as smooth as possible. Um, so we did that for maybe about a year, and then Rob got to a point where he decided he wanted to stop for a while. And he's like, you know, I don't want to stop you guys, but I'm sort of, you know, wanting to take a break. And it had always been Rob and I from the get-go. You know, back like we were saying earlier, Odyssey, Odysseus Reborn, or whatever fucking variation of the band, it had always been Rob and I. And with him stepping down, we sort of had a conversation, and we're like, you know, is it really Odysseus anymore, sort of thing? Is it really even in that vein anymore? It's like, yeah, granted, we're still playing what are now the Odysseus songs, but it's sort of doesn't feel like that band so much anymore with just one remaining member.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I had this name kicking around for a while, Exotic Potion Cookies, and I'm like, you know, I honestly think that's a great name. The type of music that we're creating now,
Mm.
it's very unusual, you know, music. It's very unorthodox the way it's done, and it's just a weird, strange, fun time. And I'm like, well, that's a name that kind of suits what we do. And so we
Mm.
did that, and we went through a little period with another drummer who, you know, he did a good job for us. He did what he did. But he's flat out with other bands and things. You know, he's got his own stuff going on. And
dramas.
thankfully, Rob sort of decided, I guess, you know, he was missing it, you know, after a few months and was like, yeah, look, I'm happy. I would like to come back if you'd like to have me back. And absolutely, you know, because, you know, him and I have been jamming for you know, for 10 years or more sort of thing, you know, together in different bands or whatever, you know, we've been
Mm.
working together a long time. And to actually have that, back, and we just work so well together, the three of us. It's it's really good.
Kind of
It's really
sounds like
good
that
to have
time
him
off.
back on board.
Sounds like that time off was really good for him too.
It
It kind of
was, man,
sounds
and
like
it
it
was
came
for
full
us.
circle. Yeah.
It was for us as well because we realized what we had, a little bit more, and actually started to appreciate a little bit more and go like, oh wow, like we actually we the three of us work pretty well together, sort of thing. And you notice it straight away as soon as that other person isn't there. You're sort of like, yeah.
So Rob being back now, and you guys have definitely dropped a few singles, and all of that, and you have been dropping new material, and you've been incredibly busy, since the
Yeah, man,
brand
we try to
change.
we try to stay busy.
Yeah, I
Obviously,
think knowing the dude is yourself, man, it's hard for you not to stay busy.
it is like that.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
like that. But no, man, it's just like, you can always be doing things. I guess you gotta think about things, I guess. And it depends how dedicated you want to be to your project or whatever you're doing. But for myself, I'm like, no, this is like sort of the main thing that I want to be doing and putting as much of my time as I can be into. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. So you've had all of that going on, and we had a brief chat on the phone a couple of days ago in preps for this, and yes, there's a couple of singles, well, quite a bit of music actually you guys have dropped, but you were talking about a new single that you're dropping that's even more unorthodox than the unorthodox.
Yeah. So this one was sort of like, okay, we had this. I'll just, yeah, I'll go from the beginning of it. Basically, we had this jam last year. Like I mentioned before, we have jams, okay, and that's how our songs come together. We have a jam, and if we start playing, usually I'm like, oh, this actually sounds like we could be getting into something. I'll just chuck my phone out, chuck record on, capture whatever, and then listen back to it at whatever point and try and piece together whatever we can out of the jams. And sometimes we get a whole song. Other times it's like, yep, take a bit here, take a bit here, take a bit here, kind of mesh it together, and then we actually jam it together in person. But so we get on the road a fair bit, and we have the opportunity when we're on the road where we can find a place to set up and play pretty much wherever, because we take a generator with us. So we as long as there's no one in the vicinity, we can pretty much we set up the drum kit, set up the keyboard and amps and guitar amp and everything, and run it all off the generator, and we can just jam wherever. And we've created a fair few songs on the road in that kind of way, and recording things. And we did this one last year when we were coming through the through the desert, near Broken Hill, I think it was. And we pulled up on the side of the road, and it's just flat everywhere, and it's just orange soil. And we set everything up, and we had this jam. And I must have put the phone in the best spot possible, because we listened back to it like later, and we're like, damn, this is like near recording quality sort of thing, captured from an iPhone on video mode, like in the middle of the desert, just so there's no rebound, nothing. It's just air, and everything. But yeah, like we listened back to it, and we're like, oh damn, this whole thing is actually really cool. It's like a 17-minute jam, and we talked about sort of what we usually do would be to refine it, play it, and get comfortable with it and get it tight and get it all sort of worked out so we can actually play it live. For this one, we sort of went, wow, this song's actually just really good how it is, and I don't know even if we'd be able to replicate it, play it, and especially being like
You actually
17 minutes
caught lightning in a bottle.
to an extent, right? Like that's sort of yeah, the idea. But yeah, we're not even sure if we could play it live again, kind of thing. It's one of those things. It's like it's just 17 minutes, so it's long, right? And it's like that's almost a full set. If you're doing a half-hour set, you want to
Hey
play
guys,
that
here's
song.
our one song. See you at the end.
And it's like, yeah, we could probably split it up into like 3 parts or whatever, but it all flows really nicely together. So we basically ended up going like, hey, why don't we just release this as is? Do a few little bits and pieces as we can to it. It's only a single track, so and with all the instruments in it, so there's not a lot of stuff we can do. But like, hey, why don't we just release this and actually release it as with a story? Is like, this is our writing process. This is where the story starts. We capture a jam like this, and then we make a song out of it, basically. But here's a completely unedited one, live from the desert. as like from last year, and it's pretty sweet. You know, like I
That's
sat down and
sweet.
listened to it again the other night for the first time in a while, and you know, it's one of those things. You know, like certain bands and songs and things, you can kind of just you sort of get into a bit of a meditative state with. You
Mm,
know, it
mm.
just you sort of sit there and it just pulses
Yeah.
sort of thing, you know, and you relax into it sort of thing, and yeah, nearly fell asleep listening to it, which probably doesn't say a lot for the song, but it's you know, it's in a good way. I think in a good
Yeah.
way, you know, it's meditative sort of thing, you
Yeah.
know. It's
That's
yeah.
sick. And on you, I
So
know
yeah,
you've got a
pretty cool
couple of
stuff.
shows lined up as well. Kind of.
Yeah, man,
I don't
yeah.
know if it's in support of it or not, but I know you've definitely got quite a few lined up.
We've got I think I can talk about these ones because they're pretty much announced already, but Gutterfire are coming back up the coast and doing a northern run, and we're pretty much doing most of the northern dates with them when they're coming up. That's in May, so pretty keen for that.
Mm,
And then we've got some works. I don't know how much I can say about it, but we've got some works with the Forest Boys from Cairns.
nice.
They're doing a bunch of things coming down in September-ish, September, August. They've got a whole bunch of stuff planned, and we're pretty tight with them. So pretty keen to be doing a bunch of shows with
Mm.
those lads coming down the
Oh,
coast as well.
they're a vibe, man. They're not only a
Yeah,
good crew of dudes,
100%.
but they're a fucking good vibe, man. So,
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
this leads me to there was a story you told me the first time I met you, and this has to be put publicly in an interview form. It was when you were telling
Oh,
me I might just give a quick preface to it. This was just before COVID lockdowns first happened. So this was like the first fucking lockdown. And you were on tour.
Yeah,
So
dude,
what happened? What
sort of,
happened?
sort of, right? Okay, so like I was saying earlier, right? There's so much shit that with COVID that's affected so many people in so many ways. Um, but you know, like originally, okay, so when COVID first hit back in 2019, we were in Reborn. Okay, we're still in Reborn, and we had just planned this whole run of shows going down south and everything, and it was like our biggest tour yet. You know, it was crazy all the things we had locked in. I was like, this is so good. And then COVID hit, and it's just like cancel everything, cancel
Mm,
every show, cancel all the shit. And it was just like, ah, man, that's brutal. And then, you know, as we all know, it's sort of, you know, it was up and down through that whole next period, you know,
mm,
like 2020 or 2021, it sort of calmed down a little bit and things were, you know, opened up again and things were, you know, sort of happening, but sort of, you know, a little bit sketch, but not shut sort of thing.
mm,
And that was when we changed to Odysseus. And so I was on keys. We'd done that switch, and we were going down the coast. It was a Death by Carrot run. We were going with them, and we got to I think Newcastle. We were supposed to be going down to Victoria and all that, and we got down to that area, and then it was like, oh, the borders have shut to Victoria. We're like, okay, well, we can do two things here because we're supposed to go around to Adelaide, right? But obviously, going around and going through Melbourne up to Adelaide is a lot better than avoiding Victoria to go to Adelaide.
mm. You got to go
But
from
we're
New
like,
South Wales to Northern Territory down to South Australia.
well, there is actually the little crossover, and that's
Mm,
Broken Hill. That's Broken
mm,
Hill. There's this little piece of New South Wales that crosses into South Australia, and we ended up deciding, you know what, we're here. Let's just do that. Okay, we're gonna lose some dollars doing this because we're not playing those shows down in Melbourne and that. But hey, at least we can get over to Adelaide. And the idea was as well that we were going up to Northern Territory as well to play some shows up there. So it was like, sweet, sweet, sweet. This is great. You know, we can continue the tour. It's just we have to skip out on Victoria. That's fair enough. And so we did that. We did Adelaide. That was sweet. We got up to Bapedi, I think, around that area. And then we were supposed to be going to Alice Springs. We got up to Alice Springs, and then we were staying in this campsite. And I was walking through the campsite like the next morning, and I hear this lady on the phone. She's like, "Oh yeah, Alice Springs is about to go into lockdown," and we're like, "What? Like what? Really? Is this about to happen?" We're like, "Okay, no, this is getting real fucked. Like we don't want to, you know, be here. We don't want to get stuck in Northern Territory, not knowing what the hell we're doing for X amount of time, you know, while this place is in lockdown. So we're
mm.
like, let's just get back to Queensland ASAP. Let's get out of here because far out. Let's just get home at this point because we don't know what the hell's about to happen next. So we good old Google Maps. We're like, okay, let's go back to Queensland. Let's just get back over the border, kind of thing. So we're not stuck in Northern Territory.
Mm.
And it took us a lot. It took us up to this thing called the Plenty Highway, and it could be anything but the Plenty Highway. And so we travel along this asphalt, this sort of dodgy-ish asphalt road for about 100 k's, and we're like, oh, okay. And then it turns to dirt, and we're like, all right, okay, like
Road.
it's all right, yeah, it's okay. And we get another 100 k's along that, and it's just getting rougher and rougher, and it's getting later at this point, and we're like, fuck, do we turn around? No, because the place is about to go into lockdown. We really just need to get back to Queensland. So we keep going, and it's bumpy, man. It's like corrugated dirt, and just like the whole time, like everything in the van's just shaking around and moving. The trailer's bouncing around, it's not a good time. Anyway, it gets to like I think 6 o'clock at night or so, and suddenly something happens to the trailer. It's like the trailer's just sort of thing, and we get out and we have a look, and one of the welds is broken on the trailer, and like the actual weld that holds the wheel on, that holds the leaves, the springs, and that it's snapped. The weld's gone, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no reception. There's no one anywhere for hundreds of k's. We're just like, well, what do you do? What do you do in a case like that? Like, what do you actually do? Um, so shit, we just had to load the van up. We packed everything that we had in the trailer into the van. The van was our living space, so we had to sacrifice our living space and just tuck everything in the van. It was way overloaded, but again, what else are we supposed to do? We talked about things, but we're like, it's getting dark. We're like, we don't know who's about to come along this road. They could fucking rob us. We've got a bunch of shit with us. Anyone
Mm.
could just rock up, and if they had a gun or anything with them, and just be like, sorry, we're taking your shit. It's like, far out. Okay, I guess you
Fuck.
are.
Yeah.
So, and you start thinking these things, and you're like, far out. Like we've kind of got to get a move on. We got to get out of here because damn, we don't want to be stuck here. And yeah, so we loaded up the van, and dude, fuck, the next 6 hours or 6 to 7 hours of just driving with this van packed, and the road's getting dodgier and dodgier. It's fucking dark now. We come to sections of the road that is just mud and water, and we're not in a four-wheel drive. We're in a Kia Carnival, and we see these sections, and I'm in the front seat like. Rob's driving the van, and he's just like, yep, okay, just floor it, just floor it, just floor it, just floor it. And luckily we didn't get bogged anywhere. Seth's fucking asleep in the back of the car. He's gone. He doesn't, it's not his problems at all.
When I wake
It's
up,
like,
we'll be back in Queensland.
it's Rob and I are like in the front, like, so, but anyway, like, oh man, it was the longest, dodgiest road. And we pulled over, I think, at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. It was still on the same road, but we're like, we need to sleep. So we slept sitting up in the van, and then got back on the road next thing in the morning, and managed to get back into Queensland. And coming into Queensland, it was crazy, man. I've never been anywhere where it is completely flat. Like you
Mm.
look every direction and you can't see anything on the horizon. Not a tree, not
Fuck.
a bush, not anything. It's just flat every direction. And it's such a surreal thing, to
Mm.
look around in every direction and just not see anything. And anyway,
Uh,
we managed to get back in, and we got into to Mount Isa that day, and it was sort of smooth sailing from there. We actually ended up finishing our run down the coast of Queensland because we had gigs booked in Cairns and Mackay and Rocky and that coming down. So we managed to complete all of those and sort of do that. But that was a hell of a run.
yeah,
That was a
dude.
hell of a trek,
That
that
That's
one.
fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
I've got it. He's got to tell this story in this interview, man, because I'm like, that's one of the craziest fucking stories I've ever
Oh,
heard,
dude.
dude.
I know. I
So,
don't know if we have time. If we have time, I'd love to tell one other little story that's
sure.
Go
in the
hard,
same
man.
vein. Okay, so this is actually just last year. This one, it's like every time you tour, you get slightly better, but every time there's always something else, as well. So it's like I guess you're always learning at least. But anyway,
Mm.
we got all the van fixed up and everything, to do the run that we did last year because we usually try and do one big run a year where we go down south and do that sort of thing. Um, and we pretty much got everything done. Rob's like, the alternator probably needs doing, but we'd spent all our funds doing the tires and the service and everything else that needed doing in it. So anyway, we're going down south, and we got to Sydney, I think it was, and we had a few days before a show, which was really good. We were going to this campground that we know sort of just outside Sydney, and we're traveling along. We're going through Sydney. It's about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden the whole van's losing power, and we're losing power, and it's like, oh, power's gone, we've lost it. Okay, shit, pull over on the side of the road. Okay, all right, what are we doing? I'm like, we worked out. We're like, it's probably the battery. Okay, the battery's pretty old. We're in the middle of Sydney. This is sweet. This is good. It's like the best place this could have happened. Let's go,
Mm.
get a new battery. And so I had a quick Google. There's a place just down the road to get a battery. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Went down, got a battery. Cool, done. Chucked it in. We're sweet. Let's go. Off we go. 15 minutes down the road, same thing happens. It's like, okay, okay. So it's not the battery, it's the alternator. And because it's like a 2008 Kia Carnival, it's a more modern car, so it's like everything's running off the battery, basically. So we've lost power again, and we're like, fuck, it's now 6 o'clock or 6:30 on a Friday night, I think it was. Um, no, it would have been like a Wednesday, sorry. Would have been like a Wednesday. But yeah, we're like, shit, what do we do in this case? We're on the side of the road on this busy street in out of Sydney. What are we gonna do here? And so we called a mechanic, and he's like, "Oh, look, man, no, I don't have any, spots for you. I'm down staffed as it is with COVID and everything, that's been happening. But give this dude a call. He might be able to help you." And I had a look, and he didn't open until the next day. So we're like, "Okay, so what are we gonna do here?" We have a generator with us, right? We had a generator, and we had a battery charger with the generator. So we ended up charging the battery on the side of the road with the generator, managed to put it in and get us up the road to this fuel station, right? We're losing power as we pull into this fuel station. And we're like, okay, well, we're not going anywhere, right? Because we actually can't go anywhere right now.
Mm.
So I went and saw the attendant. I'm like, hey, look, we're having car troubles. Is it cool if we stay the night here? She's like, yeah, whatever, okay. So we stayed the night in this gas station,
Oh.
like set up in this in the corner of this gas station. Next day, we're like, okay, let's try and get this down the road. We've got 2Ks, to get down the road to go to this mechanic that was recommended to us. And I gave him a call. He's like, yeah, bring it down. That's all sweet. I'll get it sorted. So we're like, okay, cool. We've just got to get it there. We've just got to get it there. And we tried charging it. Wasn't charging so well anymore. We're like, okay, all right. We actually ended up having to run the generator in the car on the passenger seat, connected to the battery. So it's like the generator was powering the car to get it down the road. And we managed to get it to the mechanic, and it was like, yeah, okay, sweet, this is good, we've got it here, sweet. And he has a look, and he's like, oh, you've got this alternator, all right, well, I'm gonna have to order that in. And we're like, okay, like how long do you think that'll be? He's like, oh, like 2 or 3 days, and I'll have it done as soon as it comes in, sort of thing. And we're like, okay, all right, well, fuck, is there anywhere that we can stay around here? And he's like, oh, not really, like, that you might be able to stay up at Lake Parramatta kind of thing. And we're like, yeah, okay, all right. He's like, yeah, look, go figure out where you're staying, because we had the camper on top of the trailer at that point. We got a new trailer, and we had a camper on top of it, so we had a campsite without the van, which was nice.
Mm.
So as long as we had somewhere to set up a trailer, we'd be sweet. And yeah, we were like, okay, well, let's go check out this other place. We get up down the road, the car dies again. It's not charging from the generator anymore. It's like the lead's fucked or something, probably from running the car off the generator and putting that much power through the lead, or it's drawing that much power straight through it. So we're in a bad shape now, right? The car dies as we're about to go through this busy intersection, and it's like, shit, 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 what are we doing? Oh man, it sucked. We're just like, we shouldn't have left. We should not have left the mechanic. We should not have fucking left. Like, he told us to go there and then bring it back, and he'd do it. But we're like, damn, we shouldn't have left. We shouldn't have even gone anywhere. So we pull up on the curb of this busy fucking intersection. Thankfully, there's a battery world across the road. So I'm like, take the battery out, go across the road to this battery world. Can you put this on charge? He's like, yeah, give us about 3, 4 hours. I'm like, okay, all right, we'll just chill in this intersection for a few hours. That's cool. That's all right.
No worries.
So yeah, like he's like, oh no, I'll put it on the high power charge. It'll just be a couple of hours. I'm like, all right, okay, cool, do that. Came back, got it, put it back in. We're like, right, we're not going anywhere. We're going straight back to the mechanic. We're not going anywhere else. So we ended up going down the road. It was luckily this mechanic was at the bottom of this cul-de-sac at the bottom of this hill. We were able to detach the trailer. We're like, let's just stay down in this cul-de-sac for a couple of days. And so we detached the trailer outside, and set the tent up there and everything, and had it all set up, and took the car in there. And we ended up camping out in this cul-de-sac next to this mechanic for like 2 or 3 days. We were waiting for this new alternator to come in from Melbourne, and like it was a bit rough. But we're like at the same time, I'm like, well, look, if anyone comes and has problems, we're just like, what do you want us to do? Like, what if have you? Can you take us somewhere?
Hey,
Can
do you
can
have an
hook up the
alternator?
trailer?
We'll move if you give us an alternator, dude.
It's like we don't really want to be here. But hey, if you have a tow bar and can take us somewhere where we can actually be for a few days. But luckily we didn't have any issues. It was like sort of an industrial area, so I think we're out of the way enough. And we managed to get it fixed the day of the gig. It was actually a Frankie's gig, and
Fuck, nice.
it was a really good gig. It was a
Yeah.
really good gig we had that night. But fuck, man, that was just another road story.
Oh, dude, I'm
The
sure
shit that you
you've
have
got
to
the shit you got to do, man. And I know you're
improve, overcome, adapt.
you're full of these stories, man. So look, I think we'll save the rest of them for the stream because I'm sure there'll be a couple that'll come through, dude.
Yeah,
We're gonna
dude.
wrap
No,
that one
for
up
sure.
there for today, dude. So look, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Alex. Go keep an eye out for the new exotic potion cookies single that should be coming out sometime soon, and go catch them on the road. They're awesome dudes, lovely people. And yeah, we're super excited to see what comes of this 17-minute desert jam. We're keen as beans.
Thanks, man.
Easy, all good, guys. Well, look, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.